You are entering the Nillyverse with your hosts Gustavo Candia and Rodney Perry. This episode has been brought to you by the Society of Namecoin. No. Hello, and we're live. Rodney.
Morning.
Great to see you. We have Nothing Over the Edge of Continua this week. That's what the episode is entitled. And and in the first paragraph of the subsection, we introduce this idea of that the continua that we're referring to are subtlety, number or extent, and absence. So that the limit of subtlety is ether, as in it's the most subtle. The limit of number or extent is infinity, which is like the largest number if it to be a number, right?
Right.
And the most absent at the edge of absence is nothing.
Right.
And we speak of in the book a number of times about jumping off that cliff edge of the continua, and doing so but not properly prepared is enough to drive anyone mad. There are many cases in the annals of the history of science. There's Gödel and Cantor. The problem was thinking too much about what lies beyond the cliff edge, as opposed to, and here we could sort of learn a little bit from the popularizers of science, and just a very little bit, but they do have something here, and that is, instead of thinking about that which lies beyond the edge, probably more helpful to think about what's happening around the edges of, say, for instance, the black hole, right? We can't observe, or scientists can't directly observe the black hole, but they look at the event horizon and what's going on around a black hole. And that is how they gain some understanding about it, around it, without wrapping their minds of it. To avoid madness, because you can get sucked down into the black hole quite easily if you think a little bit too much about it. Right. Is that what you find too?
Yeah. Well, the event horizon is the modern version of standing on a cliff over a huge gorge, right? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the really interesting things about what we did in the book is we give our readers a whole long list and a variety of approaches to nothing, and a variety of handles to literally hang on to while they peer into nothing. And this was the image of the cliff edge was brought up again by Casey Cole, of looking over the edge into infinity, and what can come about that's positive there. And it turns out that with the use of heuristics like nihilology, that you learn a lot by looking over and seeing what you can see. Peering into the black hole would be the modern phrase. Looking into the canyon, it would be the more traditional way of looking at it. But one of the things that this writer, Rudy Rucker, who talks about, he's an amazing man, what he puts out, but he talks a lot about infinity. And he basically says that looking into nothing, looking over the cliff edge, stretches our ability to think. It makes us bigger thinkers. And in bigger thinkers, as one of the images I had is, you can kind of bring some things in to widen your own range of understanding through looking over the cliff edge. And that cliff edge image was also very helpful when we talked about the existentialists, when we talk about Nietzsche and Sartre later. So I just think it's one of the better handles we gave our readers.
Indeed. You mentioned Rucker's thoughts on infinity and how it expands our minds about. Cantor's work was just that. Before Cantor, infinity was one. And only one. So the example. So you think of the natural numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. Right. What Cantor proved essentially was that infinity is the same as the infinity of, say, all the even numbers. And the way, so you think, well, how is that possible? First off, you think that there's only one infinity. But then when I just present this example, right, of the natural numbers versus the even set of numbers, you imagine that the even set of numbers has half the number of elements in that set than the natural numbers. Right. But no, how Cantor sort of defined infinity was, is there a correspondence between one set and another set? And if there is, then that will point to the fact that they be the exact same infinity, right? So there's a mapping algorithm. There's a way to map the set of natural numbers to the set of even numbers, and that's very simply the number 1 gets mapped to so the first element of the natural numbers is the number 1, right? And the first element of the even numbers is 2. So 1 gets mapped to 2, 2 gets mapped to 4, 3 gets mapped to 6, and so on and so forth. And so long as that mapping, there's no point in that algorithm that things break, then what we can say is that those two sets, their infinity is equivalent, right? So their infiniteness is equivalent. But there is no correspondence between, say, for instance, the natural numbers and the real numbers. Okay. Which is like, say, for instance, a real number would be like the number pi is a real number, right? 3.14159, blah, 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 right? There is no way to map the number 1 to, well, you can map one number to that number, right? But there's no algorithm that you can use to map each element of the natural number set to an element in the real number set. And so the conclusion there is that for Cantor is that the real number set is actually a larger infinity than the natural number set. Right. And that makes sense, right? There's how our mental capacity of what is conceivable, right, at least mathematically, has grown thanks to Cantor and this demonstration. That's right. So I guess infinity, right, then no longer stands as a number or a quantity, right? But as a quality of quantity. Right. Because to be a quantity, it must be quantifiable, which infinity is not. We say that there are larger infinities now and there are smaller infinities, but they're not quantifiable themselves, right? And in fact, actually, if we stay with mathematics here, infinity is created by, say, for instance, taking any number x and dividing by 0. Correct, right? We were told that, like, say, for instance, the number 10 divided by 1 is 10. 10 divided by a half, or 0.5, is 20. 10 divided by a tenth is 100. 10 divided by 100th is 1,000th, and so on. You see that it's actually growing, right? The closer and closer the denominator gets to 0, the larger the number blows up, right? So that essentially at 0, it would have reached infinity if it ever reached 0. Right. So, but that quantity or that quality is not called in I guess, strictly speaking, it's not called infinity for the mathematician. It's actually called undefined. Right? And there's wisdom in that. That it's undefined. Right? There are ways that mathematicians normalize infinities to make them serviceable, but as is, they are unmanageable. And in fact, if infinity pops out of a solution to the inputs of a physical theory, this is actually a key indicator that the theory fails to describe reality under those conditions. Right. And you see, and that's what sort of where science is at today, like with quantum mechanics, like the instant that, or the moment of creation, right, or the moment of the Big Bang. The theory breaks down. You have all these infinities popping up in their solutions to these problems. So that suggests that the theory fails at those points, right? Because it's yielding a solution that is undefined, which is anathema to scientists and mathematicians. Right? Well, not mathematicians, maybe scientists, not mathematicians. Mathematicians can deal with it because they're in their heads, right? They don't have to worry about physical reality. Right. So It's okay to leave things undefined for mathematicians.
Yeah.
The physicist, though, has problems with it. Actually, a little side note, a little asterisk here. Do you know, so remember how I said x over 0 is equal to infinity?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a little caveat to that. Provided that x does not equal 0. Right? So anything over 0 is equal to infinity, or undefined, is undefined. Mine except for 0 over 0, which is actually called indeterminate, not undefined. Right. And there is a reason for that. The indeterminate solutions could be made determinate if operated on. There's ways that you could make the 0 over 0 sort of disappear, and you could work with it. You can't work with it as is. It's just saying that as is, it's indeterminate, right? But if you do certain things to it, then a real solution might pop out, right? But so there's a different category or there's a different state of being, right? For solutions, right? There's the undefined solution, and then there's the indeterminate solution, and it's actually the indeterminate solution that is more workable or more serviceable than the undefined solution. So that, anyways, that's what I wanted to bring up. But you mentioned, like, you introduced this idea that about a heuristic. What is it that we're building here with teleology, and how will it help us, right, understand, I guess, these limits of subtlety, extent, and absence?
Well, I mean, some of it was, I mean, that was really interesting. That was much like the categories that you put up on Facebook this week.
Yes. Oh, you saw that? Yes. I'm starting to dabble a little bit on social media.
Yeah, no, that was quite good. Well, one of the things that's interesting with the Cantor, he totally expanded our notion of infinity, because he said there's more than one kind, which is utterly a problem for the normal conception of infinity, right? That's pretty interesting. That a little bit akin to what we're doing in nihilology, to expand, even pull the rug out from under concepts about nothing that are common, whereas he did that completely with infinity, that there can be more than one kind, is astounding. And one of the things that's interesting that you said there was that the usefulness of understanding indeterminates. It's a very powerful thing to know that certain things are undeterminable. Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was quite good, because it parallels much of what we talked about in nihilology, which I thought was really good, really interesting. What were you going to say?
No, go ahead.
Well, you had just talked about heuristic. We can go back again.
Yes, please. Yes, that's. I think it's a really important concept to sort of nail down, because it really speaks to what it is that we're doing, with nihilology. Yeah.
So nihilology, the logic of nothing, is an attempt to. It's an attempt to critique popularizers of science, but as well as it's also an attempt to enhance the science of the popularizers by giving them a heuristic of nothing. I just wanted to mention one thing. We talk about this a lot later in the book, about how utterly impactful, how utterly important these popularizers of science are, and it's very important for us to have a knowledgeable, subtle a relationship to who they are in the culture, and and work with them in their function in the culture. I was looking at this Joe Rogan podcast interviewing Lawrence Krauss the other day. You sent me there, I think, right?
Yes.
That not the podcast, but the YouTube version where they have the video on it had 2,805,000 views. Can you believe that?
Incredible.
I mean, how many books in history have sold that many copies? So I mean, if these popularizers of science are using modern forms of information transfer in a way that is so impactful and creates so much. They are creating the images and the knowledge and the myths and the beliefs of today, and it's very important to I think have a hands-on, very smart relationship to who they are and their limits, which is one of the things that I think we have done. So I just wanted to bring that out. I think that nihilology is performing a very important function, and that function is going to be helpful, I think, as the world goes along.
And to that point, I was having a conversation with a friend. It was about scripture, right? And he's sharing with me certain interpretations of the book of Ecclesiastes. And then, he's asking me about sort of what I'm doing with nothing and nothingness, right? And how he's not convinced that we're taking the right path. He's more in the camp where, it's only through scripture, right, that the truth will be revealed. I'm going to read you the response that I gave to him that addressed this point specifically. So I included elements of this subsection in this response. Basically, it goes like this. In the absence of revelation, which all atheists agree to, God is unknowable in what he is, as is his purpose for us and for the universe. As such, God is deemed irrelevant by said persons, and thus not a worthy subject of inquiry. Our tact is not to challenge this idea.
Okay.
The motivation behind nothing and nothingness is not to speak about what God is, or even that he is, but to refine what should be happening at the edges of all human understanding if we are to remain consistent with our pre-existing frameworks.
Okay.
How should the scientist specifically conceive of the limits of extent, i.e. infinity, subtlety, i.e. ether, and absence, i.e. nothing or nothingness, in light of all human understanding, or in light of all human knowledge? By better understanding what scientists can consistently mean when using the word nothing to describe some aspect of their theories to the educated masses, then we can minimize the chance that a scientist's beliefs are passed off as science in bad faith.
Right.
No one should have any issue with this. In fact, all parties involved should demand it. I'm looking to speak to the atheists out there, and I think that what we've written here with nothing and nothingness, and I guess what we're trying to build with this heuristic of nihilology, is a bridge between the believers, right? The religious believers out there and where everyone else is, or those that cannot believe for one reason or another. We want to help bridge that gap so that we can understand each other. It's not just the atheists understanding the believers. No, the believers have to understand what the atheists are rebelling against.
Right.
It's a rebellion. Most hardcore atheists became that way because they're rebelling against their upbringing, right, or something that they experienced firsthand,
right,
which might have been horrible. Let's not strawman religion, right? That's my plea to the atheists out there. Just because maybe you had a horrible experience with your particular religion at childhood, let's not brandish all religion as being infantile or inimical to reasoned, rational thought. Let's try to understand what each party, where each party stands, and then come to some middle ground.
I mean, we do a lot of this discussion, I think, in the book. And if you remember, we talk a lot about from the 50s when Gordon Allport talked about the maturation of religion, that people actually mature as they go through their religious lives, and that maturation incorporates a variety of ways of authentically relating to religion. And one of the things that I really liked about so it's not about denying anybody's religious views by any means. I think in focusing on nothing, it is a way of bringing atheists and believers together. One of the things that Allport began, and we extended from Allport. I think we were unique in extending beyond Allport, is that faith grows from a focus on myth and ritual and congregation to a leader, an extender, a goad, a guide to moving into deeper understanding. That faith actually serves as a ground for doubt, and doubt can be a leader into deeper understanding. So I think the transitions in the discussion between atheists and believers is definitely, there's no reason, I have no problem with either myself. So
no, and I think it could strengthen the believer's belief to have that discourse, right? Maybe some believers have doubt and they suppress that doubt because they feel like, oh, if I express this doubt, then I'm going to be cast away from the congregation, or
right.
Yes. So no, let's have that open dialogue, and let's be open about the fact that we all have doubts.
Well, there was just one more thing about the Allport. I mean, Allport's forever ago now, but when he said this, that faith leads you to doubt and leads you to more understanding. It's a goad to more understanding. And one of the things that we pointed out in the book is that faith is a tool to lead you to more understanding, which is something that the popularizers of science, all science, of course, deny.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, we did a lot of work showing that, in fact, faith serves as a tool for the scientists. And we pointed that out in terms of faith in a single theory, the unified theory of everything.
Mm-hmm.
That is a faith that, in fact, there is one.
Right.
Pointed also to the heuristic function of beauty. That beauty is believed to be something that leads scientists to truth. So there is a way that we have brought Gordon Allport's discussion of religion together with scientists, and I think that is a nice bridge.
We'd like to have the scientists just acknowledge that element of faith in their worldviews. That's all, essentially. If we could just have them sort of acknowledge that, then I'd be happy. Like
that'd be
that's all I need.
That would be a great goal.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we worked hard at that one.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't have anything else that I need to bring to light here.
Thanks for your talk today. That was great.
Oh, well, I really enjoyed doing this with you, Rodney, and I look forward to next week.
Hey.
Yeah, being here with you.
Okay. You take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Entering the Universe has been brought to you by the Society of Namecoin. Until next time. No.